In this case, Salamone.
So some of you may know that I will be attending the Culinary Institute in the fall, so I thought I would share my secret for the most delicious chocolate cake I've ever had. Actually, I think I would rather talk about something that is of great importance, which is vertical burying. Everyone talks about how a simple change in the service can help save the earth. By merely changing the traditional way of horizontally burying loved ones to vertical is more environmentally friendly, cost efficient, and helps save space. During a vertical burial, the person will be placed into a biodegradable bag instead of a casket. A casket wouldn't break down due to the materials made out of, such as finished wood, steel, and fiberglass, as well as the deceased cannot embalm further. The embalming solution is formaldehyde, fentanyl, ethanol, and other solvents which seep into the air and soil. Also, it poses a possible threat to funeral workers. Imagine the thought of getting a deadly condition while working on the dead. Ironic, right? Now, there's only one place in the world that is dedicated, or that has an official cemetery to doing vertical burials. It is called Upright Burials in Victoria, Australia. Cemetery is in quotes because you want to think that it is drawn to the fact that the land is used for sheep and that there are no headstones. Instead of gravestones, they give the next the exact location of the burial, and the deceased name is recorded on the memorial wall. Wherever burial they do, they plant a green on nearby on an extinct volcano called Mount Elephant. Vertical burying is also cheaper than traditional horizontal burying. According to Upright Burials, you get pickup, administration, burial preparation, and burial, all for a one-time fee of $3,750. The average price for a burial in New York is $7,849. What would normally be included in that price is the service, burial, embalming, casket, and body transportation. More than half the price is going towards adding more to the earth. And then there's the price. This is the receipt just engraving on my grandmother's headstone, not even the headstone as a whole. Easily $1,000 on that alone. Crazy, right? Dying isn't cheap, apparently. Now, I got to visit my late grandmother at Raymond Cemetery for Mother's Day, her birthday, what have you. Now, here are a couple pictures from when I was there last. We're going to play a game of I Spy something on the headstones in the picture. You can keep your answers to yourself, but if you said overcrowding, give yourself a pat on the back because you were right. Overcrowding in cemeteries is an issue that no one really talks about. There are close to 101 billion dead people on Earth, compared to the 7.8 billion people who are alive. The dead have surpassed the number of living on Earth, and death rates are rising, which means we have to make room where we can for the deceased. According to a writer, Amstrad, some cities even convert cemeteries into parks or since cities are transforming cemeteries and putting up buildings and structures, there's not even room to start new ones. And since COVID-19, death rates have increased, which then leads the cemeteries getting a greater intake of bodies, which all adds up to the cemeteries running out of real estate, and then from that they put the graves closer together. Vertical burying actually takes less space since the body would be standing up in the ground instead of lying down. Also, more cemeteries follow how upright burials instead of burials with no headstone and just provide the exact location, and that's even more space for the amount of bodies to be getting. Okay, now some of you may be thinking, so how much space could that possibly save? And doesn't it take a lot of work to dig those holes? Well, the standing size of a grave is 2.5 feet wide by 8 feet long, whereas according to Elizabeth Fournier, a vertical grave would be 70 centimeters wide and 3 meters deep, 14 feet in diameter, and then 8 feet. So right there, you're cutting back on length, putting a headstone, just gives more room for burials. Okay, so this picture, is obviously not from the scale, is to kind of give you an estimate of how many vertical burials you could actually fit in one piece meant for horizontal burial. As you can see, 3 verticals in this rectangle, theoretically meaning that space one horizontal burial is, you could fit 3 vertical ones. To prove my point even further, say a cemetery could hold 500 more horizontal burials, and then 523 is 1,500. With this in mind, cemeteries will have to triple the amount of bodies if they switch. Crazy, right? Then there's the fact that the digging holes for vertical burials was more labor than the traditional ones. Would actually won't require more labor than you think because of the fact that the holes can be longer. It can be on the expensive side, but since vertical burying is a it's safer, and then the cemeteries accept people return, which means the more bodies can accept, the more money they get, which means it's easier to pay off the price of the altar. But you also might be saying to yourself, what about cremation? More and more people are picking cremation as a way for the remains to be dealt with, and cremation is treated in the traditional way of burying someone, but not as much as you think. Cremations require a boatload of fuel, which results in millions of tons of carbon dioxide emissions every year. According to National Geographic, the average U.S. cremation takes up about the same amount of energy and has the same emissions as about 2 tanks of gas in the average car, which is honestly crazy. Also, the particular impact of cremation depends on where and how it is performed. Over in India, the Hindus have a continuing tradition of cremating loved ones in open air crop, which requires cutting down millions of trees. Also, fires are common in the United States. But this way of cremation contributes to air and river pollution since most fire cremations are near a water source. As well as cremation is cheaper than the traditional horizontal burials at a whopping $6,645, but it isn't your cheapest option overall. So while cremation seems like the better idea overall, it really isn't. Vertical burials may seem like a new way of burying people, but actually it has been around for a while, and no one seems to talk about it. According to Kate Myers Emery, who has a PhD in mortuary archaeology, says bones are found in Germany in 1962, dating back to the Mesolithic period. A quote from an article she wrote about vertical burying states, in 2012, they went to excavate the remains, and as they continued excavating deeper, they discovered a part of the spine in anatomical order, as well as arm, bones, ribs, and pelvis. As they continued digging, they found all the bones beneath the pelvis were intact. Those bones were buried for a while, intact thanks to being buried upright. And since the bones were intact, they were able to identify that the body belonged to a male, 24 to 27, with no indication of a physical lifestyle. This could give us some insight on how vertical burying could help today with some investigations and such. Some more examples of vertical burying some examples of vertical burying is that over 1,000 years ago, the Peruvians buried their royalty upright, and in some Asian societies, they buried their warriors upright as a sign of respect. Also, Ben Jonson, a late famous poet, was buried standing up in Westminster Abbey for the fact that the traditional space of a grave was too big for him, as well as he couldn't afford it, so he wanted a 2 foot by 2 foot grave. People were being buried vertically this whole time right under our noses, or should I say feet. So to wrap everything up, it is more environmentally friendly, cost-effective for families, and saves real estate in city cemeteries just by simply changing to having your loved ones buried vertically instead of horizontally. The earth needs all the help it can get, so why not break the tradition of horizontal burials and go green while doing it? Thank you.